All right, so I wanted to talk about Israel and Gaza with you guys just because I don't know what to do in regards to that conflict. It's changed a lot since October 2023. That was a war when it began. And even at that point, people were frustrated with the use of the term war, but that was straight up Israel versus Hamas. There no doubt was collateral damage, but you saw military operations taking place. Today, though, in August 2025, and this started a while ago, it's shifted to more of a, it's a humanitarian operation in so many ways. And it's more than discussing like how this conflict is actually playing out day in and day out. It's really just a matter of dissecting narratives, like competing talking points, and deciding which one do you want to believe, or when are you going to report on it, because that's going to be the entire story. But if you give it a few hours, it'll be a different story. And if you give it even a couple days, it'll be another story entirely. And I don't know exactly how to approach that. Recently, it's just been a reduction in the coverage of that conflict because, to be honest, it's exhausting. We don't have that in other conflicts, not to this degree, not like we've seen play out over the course at least the last couple months, if not the last couple of years. But this is the type of thing that I remember. It's about a year ago interviewing somebody, and for the life of me, I can't remember who it was, but it's a professional, somebody working at one of these think tanks or in media, whatever it might be. And Gaza and Israel came up off the record. We were talking about something else, and they essentially said that they know a lot of people in their field that won't touch the subject because it could ruin their career. I think about that a lot. It's crazy that even and we've seen it. We've seen people canceled because of something they say or something they don't say at times throughout this conflict. It's been wild. And I personally am trying to keep up with it. I think it's important in a lot of ways. I think it's there's a lot of ways that it impacts the United States. I think there's lessons learned from any conflict, big or small, that I hope we're attuned to. So I think it's worth understanding what's going on there, but increasingly I understand less and less about what's actually happening. Now, if I wanted to, I actually think that this would be a really easy conflict to follow if you were, hyper partisan, hyper opinionated, and just wanted to cheerlead one side or the other. This would be so easy. All day, every day, there is just a constant stream of stories coming out that paint one side as awful. And you can just run with it. If all you're trying to do is make Israel look like the worst country in the history of mankind, no problem, man. I've got a couple Telegram channels I follow, a bunch of Twitter accounts, and a handful of websites and mainstream news organizations. I can just go straight from that. And day in and day out, I could be making 5 videos a day talking about how awful Israel is. And there's an audience for that. Conversely, I follow plenty of Telegram, Twitter accounts, websites, podcasts, where every single thing that happens in Gaza is the fault of Hamas. It's propaganda, anything that possibly makes Israel look like they may have even made a misstep. And there's an audience for that as well. So if you want to do that, and there are people who have done that, no doubt, I think it's pretty easy. I don't morally, that's not me at baseline, but morally I think that could be, I would have a challenge doing that. But look, to big picture, there's things that I would like to see done here that both Israel and Hamas could do, and they're not. And it's incredibly frustrating that we're still here because we've gotten into this narrative war of just debating the details of like how many pallets of food came in today compared with before the war, and what's the control percentage for how many children that might feed versus are starving. Like, those are the that's the focus of everything right now in Gaza. It's wild that we're at that point. But big picture, and what I still don't, there's so many aspects of this that I feel like you bring them up and we just move straight past it to, well, what about the children, right? Or what about Hamas is bad? And yes, got it. Hamas has a card to play here. Like, they are not just sitting there without blame. And I don't understand why this isn't brought up more. Like, they are actively holding Israeli hostages today, as we sit here right now. So on the one hand, they're lamenting that there's a famine and that they're trying to do what they can by the Palestinian people. They have in their possession something, a lever they could pull. They could release those hostages and say, we will release them, and there we go. No excuse now for Israel to continue military operations and blockade the Gaza Strip. I got it. It's complicated, and there's more to it. But we can't just brush aside that they have a significant card to play and they're choosing not to. Conversely, with Israel, how about international journalists? I understand during the beginning of military operations. Personally, I don't like that. I'm more in the camp of let's get as many journalists near the front line as possible. But what are we doing at this point? Like, I got it that it's a risk to the journalists, and maybe their journalistic integrity will come under question if they have to embed with Hamas. No problem. Put that on the organizations. Put that on the AP, on Reuters, on Washington Post. Take your pick. Whoever. I'm so tired that everything coming out of the Gaza Strip can't be trusted. Full stop. Done. End of story. There's no journalists there to back anything up. That has led to some of the most ridiculous claims coming out of the Gaza Strip that we never really get any clarification on. I don't know that adding 5, 10, 15, 30 journalists in there would do it, but it seems like a place to start, right? So here we are, coming up on 2 years into this conflict, and some of these things that seem like, why not? And they're not being done. And I know that I understand. You'll get into the comments and you'll see people explaining exactly why what I just said is so stupid, because there's so many simple reasons why that can't be done. I guess we're just going to continue doing what we're doing then, because this is the path we're going on, and there's not going to be any change for what it's worth. I've had a lot of people recently ask me, well, how can the U.S. let this happen? I got news for you. The U.S. doesn't care. I'm sorry. Don't shoot the messenger. Like, this is not a priority issue for the United States. It's not close. There are some very loud voices in the United States where this is a priority. But if you look at the actions of our senior leaders, going all the way up to President Trump, what's happening in Gaza is not top 20. And I don't think, at all. They clearly don't, nobody views this as something that's going to impact their ability to legislate or even impact their ability to get reelected, which is really what they all care about in the first place. If they did, you might see some sort of changes, but there's nothing, right? It's just hands off, just do whatever, which means that we're just going to continue to see the same thing that we're seeing today, which is chaos. Now, when I'm talking about these conflicting narratives and just a different story every few hours, I don't know what you do with that information. Like, we don't have that in other conflicts. In other conflicts, there tends to be at least something a thread you can pull at to kind of get an idea. A couple examples here. Just a few days ago, there was an Al Jazeera reporter killed by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. And to tell you how this could play out, if you wanted to just say, hey, everything Israel does is bad, you had plenty of ammunition there. Right away, a bunch of international organizations ran with this story. It was all over the headlines everywhere. There were countless TikToks and X posts and Instagram reels of Israel just deliberately killed a journalist, of Al Jazeera nonetheless, one that people have seen his face all across the world. And that ran for a couple hours and no doubt continues today. But if you gave it a couple hours, then Israel came out and said, yeah, also the dude was a member of Hamas. And we have pictures of him with senior Hamas officials, which as a journalist, he's probably going to do that. But then pictures of him celebrating October 7th. Pictures of him stepping on the head of a dead Israeli soldier on October 7th. Like, okay, all right, so maybe like journalist with an asterisk, right? Like, seems like there's a little bit more to that story. Dude sounds like he was straight up a full-blown Hamas supporter, according to that information. Is it somewhere in between? Where does it sit between? I don't know, because I'm going off the same information you're going off of. And I don't know that everybody is giving the full story. You just got to take someone's word for it, I guess, is how this all kind of shakes out. Another example is and when it comes to taking somebody's word for it, by the way, I get the argument that Hamas is a designated terrorist organization. I hate them. They are bad, okay? If Hamas goes away tomorrow, great. I think that would be a net win for the world. They are holding hostages today. That is awful what they are doing. I'm not blindly trusting anyone or anything. Full stop. Like, it does not do us any good to get into this game of I trust this group of people or this organization or this country a little bit more. Ipso facto, everything they say is true and everything they say is false. It doesn't work like that. There's no country, no news organization, no reporter, nothing that is 100% fully honest all the time. You have to approach all of it with some skepticism. Even the sources here of course, the sources here in the United States, you have to approach with skepticism. So no, it is not as clear-cut, for me at least, that when Hamas says one thing and Israel says another, that 100% of the time it is exactly what Israel said. Personally, and this is a bias of mine, no doubt, I tend to believe Israel a lot more than I believe Hamas, and it's not close. But that doesn't mean that every single thing they say is true, which on that note, by the way, another thing, this is just spiraled out of control. This is turning into a little bit of a vent video, not the normal content here. Israel is an incredible U.S. ally. They've been a U.S. ally for a long time. That does not mean that they can do no wrong or that we can't be critical of their actions. Like, grow up. What is this ridiculous internet argumentation that if you say, hey, maybe Israel should have had a better day after plan in the Gaza Strip, which seems like common sense right now, that somehow that is anti-Semitic. Like, get out of here. Come on. It's any country, every country in the world makes mistakes and takes actions that we look at and say, that's not good, or that could have been done a different way. And it's not all of a sudden, singling Israel out because maybe they haven't done things perfectly in the last few years. Like, let's be grown-ups. You all are a mature audience. I know this is kind of a bottom of the barrel Twitter, Instagram type argument, but it's getting ridiculous. And we do see that creeping out into higher levels of discourse. Like, what are we doing? What does that accomplish at all? And look, Israel at times throughout this conflict has done things that have been beneficial to the United States and other things that personally, and I have said this on this channel, I think are detrimental to the United States. My view of this conflict, how I've been looking at it from day one, as any conflict, is what does it mean for the United States? I'm an American. I want what's best for my family and my fellow citizens. Like that is my priority. When looking at Ukraine, Russia, when looking at Israel, Hamas, when looking at Israel, Iran, any one of these. Sometimes it's a little more clear-cut than others, but in this case, there were situations where Israel was going after some of our mutual enemies. Hamas doesn't like the United States, but never really doesn't really pose a significant threat to the U.S. Hezbollah, however, great. Knocking them back a few steps, wonderful. I like that Israel's going after the Houthis. I think that's a good thing. I like what Israel did to the IRGC. I think that was a net positive and helped the United States more than we can probably imagine in taking out a lot of Iran's air defense systems. That one was a huge assist that I don't think anyone really saw coming. But at the same time, and we've talked about this in previous videos, the continuation of the war and the way that they are executing the war in Gaza, I think is probably a net negative for the United States. Because one of the simplest recruiting methods for Islamic extremists over the course of the last 25 plus years has been look at what Israel is doing. And the United States backs Israel. The U.S. is the problem. Like, that is just a slam dunk. You see Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, anytime they're like, what we need is a little recruiting uptick, they eventually come around and say, hey, Israel and the U.S., they're backers, go get them. So it's so easy in this case when we're watching videos day in and day out, whether it's an accurate video or a stolen video or an AI video or something in between. The fact is, people see that and they view that as accurate. And it does not take a genius to go from what is happening in Gaza to piece that together to some degree of support from the United States. I mean, it's not quite the case that every single munition dropped or every single bullet fired is, authorized by the U.S. That's a bit of an extreme position. Israel does have autonomy. They are acting in what at least some of their leaders believe is in their best interest. But for people that are at risk of getting radicalized by something they see online, you really think they're going to dig through those details? Or do they just need that high-level painting of this is the U.S.'s fault? We've already seen it to a degree. Small scale, fortunately, but I think that is a problem for the United States. I think being tied to Israel's hip, no matter what, is not good for the U.S. I don't think there's any country in the world that we should be tied to 100% full stop. There has never been a country in the history of mankind in the history of the United States, where every one of our priorities line up exactly one-to-one. It doesn't happen. It doesn't make sense to pretend that Israel is this exception. We do have some priorities that line up, but not all. And I do think there are times where the way, and I think right now is one of them, when so much of the focus is on the humanitarian aspect and people not getting food, and the pictures coming out are showing children, and the discussion is around, wait, are enough children getting food? You want to know what a losing argument is when talking about this conflict? Debating how many starving children is enough to really get concerned about. There's no winning side of that argument. All right? That's where the discussion has gone. And to continue on with these examples of, like, what do you do? Because to be honest, there's a part of me where I just get tired and I don't want to do it. Say what you want about that. Say that's the right move, the wrong move. I don't know. The problem here is that when you look at a storyline that's coming out, you want to say, here's what happened in the last 24 to 48 hours. There was a big one recently. We had the former U.S. Special Forces officer, I think, Aguilar, I believe was his name, working for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. He came out and he said, war crimes left and right by the IDF. I saw it all day, every day. You're not going to believe it. And that was a crazy story. Right? Like, it's not just that we're hearing this from Palestinians. We're not even hearing it from international volunteers or whistleblowers in the IDF. This is an American Special Forces soldier, Green Beret, saying this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. That needs to be discussed, right? But if you give it just a few hours, or maybe it was a couple days, all of a sudden the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation came out and said, hold on, we fired him because he wasn't a good employee, and he begged us to come back, and then he threatened us that he was going to expose all sorts of random stuff if we didn't hire him. And it just went, it went from there. All of a sudden, people were going after the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation for actually they're not good, and then going after Aguilar, saying actually he lies a lot. And I don't know. I have no idea. Aguilar's since gone on the podcast tour at this point. But I think it kind of plays into what I said earlier, where anybody who wants a story saying that Israel is bad, that's your guy right now, 100%. But I've also seen plenty of people coming out saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't add up. He wasn't actually here at this time, or this doesn't, I don't know. What's the better move? Is it to present the story as we know it when it first comes out? Because then it feels like the right thing to do is to follow that up 24 hours later and say, actually, we have a correction. Because that information wasn't entirely correct. There was a significant piece here we were missing. So then you issue the correction on day 2. Well, on day 3, there's another piece of information that maybe veers it back in the other direction. We know how media works and how people's attention spans work. And nobody's interested in that, right? Nobody wants the 7th update in a row that contradicts the other ones, right? And personally, in terms of making any videos or updates about this, it's exhausting. And I don't know what the time is where you say, enough, I feel like I have enough of that story, now we're going to present it. This doesn't happen in other conflicts, not to this degree. There's details that we get wrong. There's minor aspects of stories we get wrong and can come back and correct. No issue. Happens pretty regularly when looking at Russia and Ukraine. There's a report of 4 aircraft were destroyed. Wait a minute, 2 days later, we got the clarification. It was only 2. Like, that happens regularly. Not here. There's so many contradicting stories day in and day out that a lot of people at this point, it seems, latch on to whichever piece they want, and that's it. So there's no opening to present, well, hold on. And I'm not talking to you all. You guys are a great audience, very nuanced, and are regularly bringing up these pieces of the gray between the black and white. But I don't know. My gut says that I'm probably not the only one losing interest, maybe is the way to put it, because it's so exhausting day in and day out. But I don't know exactly what the move is here. I didn't want to just stop making content about this at all, because I do know there are a lot of you. I've gotten a lot of really, humbling messages from so many of you around the world, to include quite a few viewers, not just in Israel, but in the West Bank as well. And it means a lot that you come here looking for news about this conflict that's happening right there in their backyard. I don't know how to help with that when it seems like as we go on, it's less about presenting information and it's more about a he said, she said that never ends. And the minute you think you've actually got the details of something new comes up. There was last night, I think, the IDF released footage of what appeared to be a dude with an AK-47 getting out of the back of an aid vehicle wearing an aid worker's uniform. Like, that's a problem, right? Seems pretty important to dig into that. I haven't even begun to go down that rabbit hole. I don't know what the argument is going to be against that, because it's just, look, maybe this is me just accepting defeat in the information war and saying they did it. I don't know exactly to whose benefit that is when the information piece just wears you down and you say, I don't even know how to approach this anymore, but that's a little bit of the feeling at this point. I think there's a lot of things that Israel could be doing better right now. I would love to see the conflict wrapped up. I'd love to see the hostages returned. I'd love to see no question of starvation in the Gaza Strip. Wouldn't that be great, just as a humanitarian principle? We're not there. I don't know that we're getting close at all. Feels like we use the term forever war here in the United States a lot, talking about just kind of our experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is kind of fitting right now. It feels like there's a forever war happening in Gaza. And the longer it goes on, the less I actually know, less I actually feel confident about what's happening. But that's enough rambling for me tonight. I wanted to get something out there, just kind of talk through my thoughts on it, because it's a mess, man. It's a mess. Hopefully there's peace soon. That's the best I can say right now. I am going to try to keeping an eye on it. When there's clear military developments, 100%, I'll jump into that. I'm not trying to say that I'm avoiding the conflict or I'll never talk about it again, anything like that at all. More just, a little peek behind the curtain of the absolute chaos that is trying to decipher what the hell is happening in Gaza. But anyways, as always, appreciate all your support. You guys are awesome. And if you lasted this long, thanks for sitting through that long rant. Hope you all have a wonderful night. We'll see you.